And let's go to the phone right now and bring in a man who writes about the Raiders on a daily basis for ESPN.com, a guy who used to cover the Broncos on a daily basis for the local newspapers, Bill Williamson. Bill, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Doing great. Yeah, Bill, we're trying to put in perspective Kenny Stabler's career, where he ranks in the litany of great Raiders quarterbacks, where he ranks in the litany of great Raiders players. Where does Ken Stabler fit in that ranking?
Well, you know, I think, first of all, I think the 1970 Raiders team is the most fascinating NFL team ever. I mean, because they won. I mean, here's the deal: the Steelers won all the Super Bowls in the '70s. Cowboys are great. Miami was great. The Raiders are great too. They won one Super Bowl in that era, but they had so many Hall of Famers. There were so many characters. There's been so many books made about those guys. Just a real true team, and they're a lot of fun. Again, I think movies could be made about these guys. With that said, I think he was the glue of that group. He was the guy of that group. And after talking to his coach and teammates for the last 24 hours, I feel that's definitely the truth. They all feel that way. He was the glue of those heyday Raiders.
He was kind of Bill Diswoody. Good to talk to you again. He was kind of the epitome of it. I was mentioning those characters at the outset of the show. That the secondary had a bunch of characters in it. Lester Hayes with the glue all over his body, and
right.
the paid assassin at safety, and Jack
Tatum,
and Howie Long, and you go through all of the linebackers they had, and they had one of the greatest offensive lines put together. When you talk about Shell and Otto, and Otto played like 500 straight games without missing a game, and Dave Casper, the friendly ghost, and Stabler sort of epitomized what the Raiders were, and that's really when the Raiders became the anti-NFL kind of team. Would you agree with that?
Well, I mean, then I'll start with Al Davis. I mean, Al Davis, you know, that Stabler was exactly what he wanted. He was brash. He was swashbuckling, but he was supremely talented. And they all fit well together. And John Madden said today, he goes, "Look, I don't know if this would have worked today, but I cut a deal with Stabler. Said, you have your off season. You do whatever you want in your off season." And back then, that off season was January. It was a good 7 months. He said, "But I have you during the season," and he said he was all in on that. And it's just a special team or a special player, and it's the Bay Area is really reeling in the last 24 hours because every guy that was a kid in the '70s loved Ken Stabler.
Bill, is that because Stabler was the quintessential, the prototypical Raider, the renegade?
Yeah, Madden was saying today, he said, that was a little overrated and overblown. He goes, I heard a lot of stories about Stabler after he left us, but, I didn't really have problems with him, but, who knows? He was, he was freewheeling. He had a lot of fun. To me, he's the original Brett Favre. He was that guy that Brett Favre became, and, just a special player, and a lot of people are learning about him since his passing, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, Bill, you just made a great point I'd like to follow up on. You were talking about he was Brett Favre. There was Broadway Joe, and there was Jim McMahon, and there was Kenny Stabler, and we've kind of lost that. I mean, Johnny Manziel would be that kind of player if he could play, but what happened? I mean, quarterbacks were, even though they're still the center of attention, I don't want to say they were the divas, but it went from quarterback then to running back to now wide receiver. What happened to the personalities at quarterback?
I think that the job is so, it's so structured now, and they're always the face of the franchise, and it's really corporate. Back then, it wasn't as corporate. It was more fun. The quarterback could be the loose guy. You say Namath and Stabler, Terry Bradshaw was a little goofy, Staubach he wasn't. He was a CEO type. But, yeah, Stabler had a lot of fun. I mean, one of his great quotes is that I studied my playbook under the light of the jukebox. Today one of the quotes was he was a low ball thrower and a high ball drinker. He just you can't do that anymore. But that's great stuff, and that was 70s NFL, and he was 70s NFL.
Bill, do you believe that Kenny Stabler belongs in the NFL Hall of Fame?
Well, as soon as I found out he died, as journalists, you think, well, what am I writing? And I'm writing that the guy belongs in the Hall of Fame. I was talking to Art Shell today, and he was bemoaning the fact. I said, Art, it's almost like you forget he's not in the Hall of Fame because you just think that he should be. And he goes, that's exactly right. He goes, but us Raiders never forget it because we talk about it all the time. He should be in there with us. There's so many Raiders from that team that are in the Hall of Fame, and their quarterback, their leader, isn't. And, I asked John Madden, is there a logical reason why he's not? He said, yeah, it's probably the stats. Stabler had 28 more interceptions than touchdowns in his career, and he didn't have a whole ton of yards, but he won 7 playoff games in 7 years as a Raiders starter. He was MVP in 1974. He had 23 comeback wins, and he was a great and he's the only quarterback in the 70s who won a Super Bowl who was not in the Hall of Fame. So I think he belongs there. That was the tack of my column yesterday, and all his teammates think he should be in, and he's been a finalist 3 times. He's a senior committee candidate. He's eligible to be one for the last 6 years, and maybe they'll get him in someday. But I think he does. I think he belongs.
Bill, I've got to switch. We got you on that premise, but I want to ask you, the ESPN writers from the AFC West all offered their opinions recently, in the last week, 10 days, about who was going to be the Broncos' biggest challenger in the season. And I thought yours was very observant. Could you give us an idea of who is going to be? Is it Kansas City, the Raiders, or the Chargers, who will either dismiss the Broncos this year or at least challenge them?
Well, you only have 3 choices. I think it's going to be the Chargers. I just like what that team has done since they moved to the Tom Telesco, Mike McCoy area.
I thought you were saying since they moved to Los Angeles. I thought we had a quote there.
I haven't checked in the last 5 minutes, but that hasn't happened yet. But I think they got a good thing going on there, and I think they got a good defense, and they're building a good program, and Rivers got it back together under McCoy, and I think they're the second best team in that division, and if the Broncos take a dive, I would expect the Chargers to win the division.
Yeah, it was just interesting. The Chiefs are getting the Chiefs became kind of the flavor du jour there for a while, and I think Les and I would agree that it's the Chargers who offer them, and it could come down.
You,
I mean, I really believe, Bill, that it comes down to that last game of the season of who wins the division.
See, I won't go that far. Hey, Bill, Woody and I both follow you on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle for everybody?
B. Williamson, ESPN.
All right, and of course they can read you on an almost daily basis at ESPN.com. You are essentially the beat writer for the Raiders with ESPN, and we appreciate it, and we hope to be able to talk to you once training camp starts as well.
And
I'll be here, guys.
And the Denver Post misses you and all the other beat writers that have left in the last 8 or 9 years.
All right, Bill, we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Bill Williamson of ESPN.com. That segment was sponsored by John Elway Cadillac of Park Meadows, Colorado's #1.
When you go to buy a car, what do you really want? You probably want a lot of cars to choose from. And you want the dealership's best price. Not some starting price or target price, the best price. And you want it immediately, not after hours of negotiating. And you want a salesperson who doesn't get paid more if you spend more. Because, well, you don't want to spend more. Well, you're in luck. John Elway wants all of those things too. Better yet, John Elway wants you to have all of those things too. Come see us or click on johnelwaychevrolet.com.